Joining me on the telephone right now from Washington, D.C. is United States Senator John McCain. Senator McCain, how are you?
I'm fine, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well. Late night last night for you.
Yeah, we were very late and up early doing the morning show, so we were pretty busy. It was a very interesting speech, and I found it really illuminating.
Interesting. I would say interesting is a nice way of putting it. Overall, you've seen quite a few of these State of the Union addresses. What did you think last night? I was a little unimpressed by most of it.
Well, I have to tell you, Mike, I was surprised because I, along with most other conventional wisdom people, thought the president would move to the center. Obviously, in light of the elections in Virginia, New Jersey, and now Massachusetts. But he seemed to be almost defiant and clearly was not ready to either reach out seriously to us or go back to the beginning on the issue of health care. I mean, we stand ready to sit down as long as we start over, and we want medical malpractice reform. We want the ability to go across state lines and get insurance policies that you need. We understand that there's a problem with the cost of health care in America, but it seemed to me he just wants to continue that path. And also, I was amused when he said that he wanted a spending freeze next year, 2011,
right,
and that would cut $15 billion, and then immediately pivoted into a request for a quote, jobs bill,
right,
i.e. stimulus bill, that would be between $80 and $115 billion. I mean, it's crazy.
What I found interesting was that all this, we're cutting discretionary spending, and then today he's out talking about $8 billion for a bullet train. I'm a little surprised.
There's $8 billion there, and then he'll go someplace else where there's green technology, and there'll be a couple of billion there, and then it's I'm glad that nobody has told him what comes after $1 trillion. I'd say one other thing, and that is that the moving the earmarks to a website, that's reform. We've got to stop this earmark pork barreling. It's earmarking and pork barreling that gave us Abramoff and members of Congress under investigation and going to jail. And so to say that the answer to this earmarking and pork barreling is to put it on a web page, I mean, really?
I found it a little bit disheartening, and I thought it was in poor taste that the president called out the Supreme Court last night in front of everyone. Now, I know it was about McCain-Feingold, which you have a vested interest in, but aside from that part of it, did you think it was in poor taste for him to do that? And then when the Democrats stood up, it was almost like you had the executive branch and the legislative branch kind of teaming up against the judicial branch that had no way of rebutting or anything while they sat there.
Well, look, the justices of the Supreme Court deserve our highest respect. I don't agree with them, but the fact is that they didn't, like you say, they didn't have a chance to respond. And second of all, they are invited to the president's State of the Union speech, and they don't have to be there. And so, no, I thought it was, frankly, I thought it was very inappropriate. There was one other thing I want to mention very quickly to you, and that is that this whole business of saying that he's gonna stick to, he's tough and he won't quit and all that, and he wants bipartisanship. Then let's sit down together for the first time. Let's sit down together for the first time, and to say that he has, and then he wants to rein in the lobbyist. Did you get that part?
Yeah, that was hysterical.
Rein in the lobbyist. The union lobbyists have been over the White House many times. The pharmaceuticals, the hospitals, all of the special interests have been over there, and we've gotten a special deal for the unions, which other Americans do not have, which is a pure political payoff. The pharmaceutical companies, all of these behind closed doors, and he now wants to rein in the lobbyist? Thank you.
Yeah, and what seems to be a bit hypocritical is that idea when the union lobbyists didn't like the health care bill, they sat down with him behind closed doors. Then they cut a deal. They're going to be exempted from the taxes. And then he comes out and says he's going to fight that. And the Democrats stand up and cheer, which you kind of expect in these speeches. But I just thought a lot of the tone was kind of arrogant, thinking he said, I think I'm going to get some applause. I thought I'd get more applause there, and he waits to get more. It seemed a little bit off the mark. And then he goes and defends some of the very programs that the American people disagree with most. I'm anxious to see if he gets the normal bump that a president gets after a speech like this.
Well, he's eloquent, and when he says he doesn't want America to be second to anyone, I don't know anyone who disagrees with that in America. But if we keep this deficit spending, the Chinese own $800 and some billion of our paper. There's $3.5 trillion of debt around the world. Then why don't we stop the spending, and why don't we stop a program that called Reform of Healthcare that would add $2.5 trillion to the debt? When we passed the Medicare prescription drug bill, that was another $1 trillion of unfunded liability. That's why I voted against it. But the fact is, we've got to stop the spending, and we've got to stop mortgaging our children's futures, and that is clearly not the intent when we're talking about, quote, jobs bill, i.e. stimulus, that'll again just ratchet up a $3.4 trillion deficit, which will be slightly less than that under the best estimates next year. You can't keep doing this.
No, and he got elected saying that you can't keep doing this with the $400 billion deficit under the Bush administration, so we know that's how he got elected. Now, on a lighter note, Senator, did you happen to hear what Chris Matthews had to say about the speech last night?
I read it. I thought at first when I started reading that it was a Saturday Night Live skit. By the way, aren't we also getting a little bit tired of BIOB, blame it on Bush?
Oh, yeah.
A little tiresome.
It was incredible.
I read that in one of the things we get into the office, and I really thought for a minute it was something out of The Onion or a skit from Saturday Night Live. But remember, this is the guy that had the chill up his leg.
Yeah, but it's so funny to hear people that are in the media who most of the time do everything they can to protect their at least appearance of neutrality, and this man has gone so far over the top. And to make these comments about how he, for an hour last night, he forgot that the president was black, it just seems so bizarre to hear those comments come out of his mouth.
You could not make it up, my friend. Again, if it was a skit on Saturday Night Live, you probably wouldn't laugh because it's so bizarre.
Okay, I have to ask you. We can't get out of here without asking you about. Now we know that my predecessor is now left. He's by all accounts, he's 99% sure he's jumped into the races to be your opponent in the Senate, J.D. Hayworth. The ads have been running here at KFYI, and I've got to tell you, Senator, some of the ads are funny. And the latest one about the snakes in Guam. What do you have against snakes in Guam, Senator?
Well, look, I think that snakes in Guam are maybe, for all I know, they're their national pet. But the point is, I don't want the taxpayers of Arizona to pay for eradicating them.
And the ads are now. It was the questions were out there. Why would you go after somebody who wasn't aid? And is this because? And now JD was on the show, and I asked him about you, Senator, and he is saying all the right things. He has said, look, he respects your service, he respects your time in the Senate. He thinks it's time for you not to be there anymore, but he has high regard for you. He said John McCAIN is a good man. How do you keep this race between you and if it's JD is the one your primary opponent? How do you keep the race civil enough so that if the primary ends and you win in the primary, that you can get the support of the ones that supported JD to win in the general election? How do you keep it civil to make that happen?
Well, look, elections are tough, and I have to make sure that the people of Arizona are aware of both of our records. I think that's fair. If there's any illegitimacy to any ad I run, I'd be glad to correct it. I have to earn the votes of the voters of Arizona, and it was very clear for a long time that J.D. Hayworth was running against me, and so we all have our records. I'm proud of my record of protecting this nation. I'm proud of putting my entire presidential campaign on the line when I said I'd rather lose a campaign than lose a war. I'm proud of the defense of the men and women in the military. I'm proud of my record of being a fiscal conservative, of Citizens Against Government Waste, saying that I'm the strongest fighter against it, and continuous fighting on the helping jobs and working for the state of Arizona. And that's what it'll be all about, and we'll also compare our records.
Okay, and that's fair. I just, the idea of, we've seen so many times in primaries people beating each other up that it's tough to get the supporters from the loser to come on board with the winner. I was just curious. One last question. Over this year, it's an election year. Everybody in the House is up. A bunch of people in the Senate are up for re-election. What do you see happening as far as the health care bill? Do you see some people trying to work together, or do you think this is going to be, based on the president's speech last night, it seems to be a lot more of the same as far as the liberal agenda?
Well, I was hoping that the president would say, I heard the message for the people of Massachusetts when they elected Scott Brown. But obviously, that's not the case. So we will have to continue the fight. Whenever they want to sit down and start all over, beginning with tort medical malpractice reform, then we're ready to do that. But until then, we're going to fight every day. And I'm so proud we have a new ally in Scott Brown in Massachusetts. And I was very honored when he talked about me on his victory speech, because I did go in and help him. He's a fellow service member, and I'm proud of him. And so I think the impression I got from the president's speech is they will pursue his liberal agenda. America is a center-right nation, and so therefore I think his approval ratings may continue down, but we stand ready to sit down and work with the president at any time, but not have their agenda jammed down our throats. You see my point?
Oh, absolutely. And, today Nancy Pelosi announced a $300 billion fix to the Senate health care bill. So it does seem as if they are not going to shy away from spending what they need to try to spend their way out of a deficit. I don't know how they do that, but it seems that that's what they're attempting to do.
Mike, they're spending money like a drunken sailor, and the bar is still open.
And that's coming from a Navy man. So
there you go.
All right. Well, Senator, I always appreciate you coming on with us for a few minutes, and hopefully when you're in town next time, we can get you in the studio.
I'll be glad to, and congratulations on your new show. I know you're going to be a spectacular success.
All right. Well, thank you. That is United States Senator John McCain that was joining us for a few moments.